In the last video, we made this tree model, and in this video, we'll learn how to create this material which allows you to uh, change or make it look stylized. Let me show some of the stuff that this material can do. So one of the stuff is you can actually scale the mesh, but this only works if it's a square mesh. Okay, so just keep that in mind. In the one that we created, we use like square planes, right? And it would work, but if you are using something like this, it would not be able to scale because this one actually uses a mesh which is, I don't know if I can show you in this one. Let's see. Yeah, you could see it's not a square. This is a free 3D model that is available in Tree software that I showed in the last video. So if you want to make it like more fluffy, more bigger, you could do that, and then maybe change the texture to be a bit more denser. I don't know, just play around with it. It would work nicely for you. I'll just set it to default, so 1 and 1. There is wind intensity, so obviously for the wind how speed it is, if you do wind weight to be 1, that's how much it's affecting it, and obviously the wind speed. Then we have emissive intensity, so if I do 0, you would see this is how it looks, because there is shadow area, right? So there's going to be shadow, but we don't want shadow. We want it to look like a, I don't know how to call it, like a bit flatter. So that's why we have emissive, which removes the shadowy area. Then we have Fresnel exponential. I don't think it's like much noticeable. This is, I think I haven't really used that much, but you could see that it's a bit darker in the center. You could see. So this is like optional if you want to do it or not. I even set it to like very low, which basically means that it's not even been used. Now there is a height around here, and this one, there's a reason why I did this. So if you actually check my video called, which one is it? Sync mesh gradient on foliage. Now, lots of the videos that show how to create stylized trees don't really show this part. So what this part does is that it allows you to have consistent gradient on foliage, because lots of the time you would be using foliage painter to add like tree, right? And we want a good gradient which is consistent on each foliage. Whenever you watch videos which are online for stylized trees, so lots of the time I've seen that their materials don't really work on foliage, like the gradient doesn't work on their foliage, because if you select a foliage, it actually selects like whole of the foliage, like every single foliage in here. So if I do select all, so this whole is considered as one actor, right? You would see. So for my material, it works on foliage too, but the other creators, I found that it didn't really work. So this height is responsible for something that I explained in the video, and smooth step is responsible for the gradient. So you could see there is a gradient effect. It's very subtle, but that's because I have used like subtle colors. But you could see from here, like if I do something like this, you would be very easy to notice. Let's go back. This is obviously the top color, and this one is an extra stuff that is optional to add. It kind of adds like one extra color for glowiness. And then obviously you could change the the texture to whatever you want. And then again, if you go to my website to get some textures, you could go to textures or go onto the post. There will be a post called Stylized Trees. In that one, if you go down, you will find the textures that I made. Download image, and if I'm using any external texture, you would find it a link like this. For example, the foliage sprite by Kenny, which has like this textures, you could see, and you could also use this ones too, and you could see it completely changes the looks of the tree. So let's start by creating a material. So m underscore tut tree grass or something. Let's create a material instance mi and basically give it to all our textures like tree. Let's also give it to this one. Now I'm going to keep this as a reference so that I don't make any mistakes. So let's do it. Let's add a roughness of 1 and specular of 0. This is again up to you. I want it to be two-sided because again the plane card should be visible from both sides. Now our first step is to create a texture or a gradient that goes from bottom to up. So let's say if I take something like bounding box and add the B channel, which is like down and up, apply it. I'm actually just going to go into low. Okay, I think it's looking way too off. Maybe unlit. Yeah, let's go in unlit for time being so that we can see it properly. You could see that there is a gradient, but it's not actually being from here. It's actually being from the pivot point. So even though it should start from here, it's actually not starting. It's starting from here and going till top. Now I'm not going to go in explaining bounding box because we are not going to use it. If you check this video, I explained in that why we don't use bounding box. I already told you that we are using foliage, so we don't want to use bounding box. We'll use a trick for that, and that is using world position. And I'm going to make the same gradient which I've made in here, and then we'll just do transform. But we need to select transform position, not transform. Okay, I've made this mistake many times, but it should be transform position. It will go from absolute world space because it's a world position, right, to instance and particle space. This one basically allows us to use it for foliage system. Then we will divide it, and this divide is important. And if you use any like world position texture, you would know why we use divide. If you are using texture with absolute world position, if you divide it by 100, then the texture gets tiled every 100 units. So if you use divide by 1000 for a texture, then it would be the texture would be every 1000 units. It will like repeat. Again, there are like videos on absolute world position which explain that in detail, but just know that we use divide usually with absolute position to tell it like how much it should take, like how much space it should take basically. Let's do promote this to a variable and call this as height. Now this height is how much height it is from bottom to up. Okay, but again we can actually also use it for controlling the gradient too. From here I'll do mask. Mask basically allows us to take only one value. So there's XYZ right in here. So when we do mask B, we only take the Z value, okay, which is Z value. If you want to learn more about like what these nodes are and what they are in detail, there is a video called Common Material Nodes by me and also a simplified, but I would highly suggest watching the detailed version. I explained all the common material nodes so that I don't have to explain in every single video. But this one basically gives us the Z axis. If you use R, it will give us like the R axis, which is the X axis. If you use G, it will give us the Y axis, and B, it will give us the Z axis in here, okay, as per this node setup. So that way you can get gradient from left to right, front to back, or up to down. We want up to down, which is why I use B, which would give us the Z axis, like the Z from here. If I add it directly, it doesn't show it because we still need to use some height. So for now, let's use 380 because I know that's the height of this stuff. Let's also add it in the emissive so that it's not getting affected, by everything else. Let's see by just going into lit. It still looks like very off, I know. But let's say if you go into our material instance in here and maybe play around with the height, you would see this is how it's looking. Bit off, right? It looks a bit off, but that's okay for now. After this, I will add another node called smooth step. Again, in that big video, I've explained what this does. Let's add here, and then with smooth step, we can promote the minimum. and call it as, I don't know, like smooth step minimum. Okay, so let's go into our material instance, go to smooth step, and now we can see that we can actually control it. You could see, and what's actually happening is if I type 0.5 in here, which is, which is going to be 0.5 in here, anything that is 0.5 and below values is just turning to 0. It takes like any value which is like below 0.5 and turns to 0, like because I set to 0.5, and then it also creates like a gradient from here. For example, if you use a checker noise texture like this, it's very blurred, right? So I don't know if there's a good texture in here by default. Okay, like this. So a texture is nothing but something that is like, different values from 0 to 1. So whichever is black point in here is 0, whichever is the fully white is 1. So fully black 0, fully white 1, and anything that in between is like 0.1, 0.5. And one quick example I can show is by color ramp. If I move it like this, imagine this is 0, imagine this is 1, and as we move forward the values change, like 0.1, 0.3, 0.5, and based on the pixel location the value would be different. So similarly, when we add, a black and white texture which goes from like this, so it goes from this to this, right? For 380 height, so it goes from 0, which is black, to white, 1, 0 to 1. So there would be like 0.1, 0.2, 0.5, like this. When I selected 0.5, what this did is that anything that was 0.5 and below was turned to black, and from here it started doing gradient. And if I do 0, if I do 0.8, 0.8, it's basically doing like 0.8. It also depends on the height. Okay, so if I set that this is 380 height, then then the gradient is from 0 to 1 for 380 units. So just know that smooth step minimum allows you to create like a gradient by controlling the values too. So for example, this is fully black, which is 0, but from here it starts going from 0, 0 0.1, 0.2 till it reaches 1. Again, please watch these big videos. I explain them in much more details. Watch from start because I also explain the basics. Without the basics, you would not be able to understand it. So this way we can actually control the gradient for the colors. So let's just place it around here for now. Now we will use a lerp node and let's connect it like this. You could press Ctrl to like change the pins like this, hold Ctrl and move it, and we'll add it in the alpha. Lerp basically allows you to use two different colors based on a black and white value. So again, we have a black and white value, right? So, or basically it's 0 to 1 value. Black and white is nothing but 0 and 1 value. So 0 to 1 values. You could see that A is set to 0, B is set to 1. So which means that wherever there's black, it would use this one. Wherever there's white, it would use this one. And then wherever there's like grayish color, it would use like mixture of both. So let's go in here and convert this to parameter and call this as color 1 and color 2. Let's connect the RGB here, connect RGB here. Let's do apply. Let's go into our material instance and let's select the colors. So green and then another green. Let's make this darker. So I don't want the color one to be, the bottom one, you could see. So what I'm simply going to do is, let's call this one as color 1 and call this one as color 2. So that the color 1 is at top, color 2 is at bottom. And now we have option of having some colors, add it like this. And this one will be darker. And with this one, we can actually control it like this. Now for now, let's just keep it this much. Let's add our material. Let's add our leaf texture. For that, we need to use opacity and I'll use the masked one. What opacity mask is that it does not have, half transparency values. Like when you use the blend mode mask, you cannot use half transparency. It has to be fully transparent or fully visible. And if you check our textures, they have fully black or fully white value, which means that fully white means 1, fully black means 0. So if we add this texture in here, if I press T, I think I already have my texture added. Yeah, there. If I connect it to opacity mask, let's select plane, we get this. And if you are not familiar how this works, the opacity mask, in a texture, wherever there is 0.33 and below, it just disappears it, and anything that is above 0.33, it shows it. But our texture is like fully white and fully black, right? So fully 1, so it's 1, and fully black, which is 0. There are no grayish value. So if there were any value which was like 0.33, like in a noise texture, it would look different. You would see that even though this texture has lots of black spot and lots of white spot, it is looking a bit weird. That is, any value in here which is below 0.33 is just getting disappeared. And again, we started seeing a shape for our trees. Now, one thing you will notice is if you are using trade software and you added, so let's say, leaf. Let me see if I have it. Okay. So for example, if you use a trade software and you add the leaf from there, you would be like, hey, where do I get the black and white texture for it? Do I have to make it? Well, actually, no. If you actually just check the A channel, this is where they have added the texture, because this is a packed texture. I've already created a video called channel packing texture, how to create it in 10 seconds, a packed texture. And what this basically is that instead of creating 4 different images for black and white texture, you could create one single image, but each and store like one black and white texture in R channel, one black and white in G channel, one black and white in B channel, and one black and white in A channel, like that. And that way you store like a space and basically don't have to create like 4 different images. So if you are using trade software like I showed in the last video, instead of creating yourself, it would be stored in A channel. Okay. So what we can do is we can create a switch parameter. This is optional. Okay. This is like not needed. If you are not using the trade method, you could just keep it this much only. And we can say that use alpha, comma, or use alpha channel, because in the texture that we made, there is no A channel. You could see there is nothing in A channel. So we cannot just use the we cannot just directly add it. So what we'll do is, if we don't want to use the alpha channel, we'll add our R channel. Even if you connect RGB, it doesn't matter, because alpha mask is just float 1, right? So it can only take 1 value, but RGB is like 3 values. So R, G, B. So if you connect R, it will only take the R value either way. We'll select this, but before that, let's just convert this to parameter. Call it as leaf texture. Let's duplicate this. We'll keep the name same, so that if we change the texture, it will automatically change for both of them. And in this one, I'll connect A channel like this, and then connect it to opacity mask. So I think you understand. If we in our material instance, if I do select A channel, it will start selecting the A panel. But if I don't, it will use the R channel like this. So if I select this, it will use the A channel. But because this texture has nothing, it will basically not show anything. But if I click here, it will do this. This is optional. This is like very, very niche. Now for the emissive, which is this section, I'll add a multiplier by pressing M and doing left click, holding M and doing left click. I'll connect this here, connect to the emissive, promote this to parameter, and call this as emissive intensity. Anything multiplied by 0 gives us 0, so it's not going to show anything. But if I do 1, it's going to show the same stuff, because anything multiplied by 1 gives the same stuff. Okay, watch the big video if you want to understand like the maths in the common material notes or the shader VFX fundamental notes. Like both of them go in much detail for this one. Now it still looks a lot off, right? It doesn't look that good, and for that we'll use something called two-sided sine, and then we'll multiply this with a 3 constant. So you could press or search for constant 3 like this, or press hold 3 and do left click. Like if you hold 1, 2, it shows this one. So 3. This one also allows you to add color, right? We'll select this one and add 0, 0, 1. I'll explain what it is and then add it into the normals. Let's apply it. And you could see suddenly we get some nice looking stuff. So again, let me remove this and show you the difference. You can see what this is doing is it's for two-sided, where the back area, like, because it's a two-sided mesh, right? So whenever the back side it is facing to us, it looks darker. If you don't use this, it looks darker. You could see there are like lots of dark spots because it's not actually facing us, but we are using two-sided material, right? We are using two-sided material. So if I remove this, you would see the amount of leaves just disappeared. You could see, but when we use two-sided, anything that is not facing to us also gets visible, but it looks darker. But when you do this, we are basically multiplying it with up vector. Now up vector basically makes it that it does not get affected by the lighting. Okay, I don't want to go in much detail, but because I'm also like not 100% sure how two-sided sign works, but what we are basically doing is that we are taking the vector of it and multiplying it with up vector, and whenever you use up vector, it doesn't get affected by lights and shadows. And I already explained in the previous video where we created this mesh, right, that how the up vector and what the up vectors does and how it affects the lighting and all. But just know that when you use up vector and make all of these vectors, like all of these vectors or normals, I mean the normal vectors face up, it basically removes all the shadows and lightings. If you watch my stylized grass video, you would realize that in that one I actually used, up vector. That way our grass doesn't get affected by the shadows and lightings. But suddenly you can see it looks like a whole mesh, like one single mesh, and the gradient actually starts looking a bit better. Now here's also another thing. Instead of using this one for the MSA, you can also create third color if you want, like this, and basically also connect it here. So instead of using the previous gradient one, you could also create your own third color to add it, and it would look something like this. Okay, so like in one extra tint or shade that you want to add, you could also add it on top of it, like this too. It's up to you. I'm not going to do this way. Let's remove this and do the same stuff that I've done before. And then there's one more thing that is another optional extra step that you could do. That is, you could take the texture coordinate by pressing U and doing left click or just search for it. Mask it on the G channel, because texture coordinate only has two values, U's and V's. So if I press R, you will only get U's. If we press G, we'll only get G. For example, this is how it looks on a plane. If I do G, we get like top to bottom. Again, the other big video, I know I keep saying that, but that video is like very important if you want to learn like materials, like these common materials, where I explain in much detail. And let's say if I connect it to the base color, let's remove the emissive. Okay, what actually it did was it created a, I don't know if we can see it properly. If I, let's say, remove this, yeah, so it made this part black and made this part white. Okay, that is one extra step that you could do to add like more color, like tip colors like this to your mesh or to your leaves. If you do R channel also looks a bit off. It doesn't look like that different, but I think G channel or maybe R channel works better. I don't know. Or you could even use a radial gradient like this, add it, and that way it applies perfectly at these corners too. And you could see now each tip gets like this color. So there are multiple ways to creating the tip extra color. So instead of having one flat color, you would give like a nice color from this point to this point instead of having one flat color. And then again you could add smooth step, and then if I do 0.5 more black color, and then it starts doing from here to 0.8 like this. If I keep it 0 and reduce this, it's now white, more whiter at the center, I think. Yeah, so I'm just going to do the G channel for now, and then create another lerp, and if I show you this one, there's black here and white here, right? So let's connect it. Wait, let me see again. Black here and white here. So we will say that wherever there is white, I want my previous color to be shown, which is like this lerp. Okay. So this color mixture that we have. So wherever there is white, we'll do that. So you could see B is 1, which means it's white. And then we'll create another color, 3, and add here. You could even call it as like tip color 3 or something. And then add it to a base color like this. And then it's up to you whether you want to add multiply around here and then add to emissive or do it from here. Really comes down to your preference. Just play around with it, okay? Let's see. You can see that the tips are looking a bit black. So let's go into our tip color 3 and let's make it a bit darker. Maybe not this much. Or even have like a different tint. Okay, just play around with the values and you will actually have like leaves which don't look, flat completely. So again, you could see what we are doing. We're just doing like one simple gradient which goes like top to bottom, and then we are just saying that, hey, I want to do one more, but based on this texture, where we are saying that wherever there is white, add both of this gradient, and wherever there is just black, add this color. Now the next step, which is to add more controls over the wind and all of this stuff, I don't understand. I actually found it on other videos. Those guys also probably find from other videos. From my research, what I found is that someone made I think a code, then they actually added it in Unity, and someone who understood at that time converted the Unity stuff to Unreal Engine and basically added it in here. So I'll explain this a bit later, but before that, let's create a simple grass wind. Okay, let's create simple grass wind, which is available in Unreal Engine by default. If I connect it to the world position offset, then let's promote this to wind intensity, let's promote this to wind weight, and let's promote this to wind speed. And then if I do apply, it would not work because additional WPO, let's just add 0 for now. This is the most basic setup. Okay, if I go to a meta instance, go to wind weight, wind intensity, and all that stuff, intensity would do nothing unless there's weight. Okay, so let's first add weight, which is we can add like 1, doesn't matter. And then let's add some wind intensity, and then actually wind weight should be 1 and wind speed should be 0.1. Wind weight again is like how much it should be affected by this other parameters. So this basically also allows you to control, if you watch my grass video, you would understand that we can control it via texture, that the bottom shouldn't move, the top shouldn't move. So that's responsible for the wind weight is responsible for that. Maybe wind weight should be lower, and then we can increase the 0.2 and intensity 0.5, 0.2, something like this. And then we start getting wind. You could see pretty nice wind. You could increase the speed, intensity, maybe not this much, wind speed. Okay, but you would still see one issue, that is in this version of my tree, it doesn't look that good, right? So there's one extra step that we need to do, and let's start doing this step. Now I'm just going to copy it and show you because I don't understand it. I'll be honest, okay? So this is what we are going to do. First, you will take U coordinate, UV coordinate. You will do 1 minus X. I'm just going to copy it, okay, and show how to like do it manually. I don't understand it. Let's do multiply, and let's set this to be 2. If I made this in older version, so there used to be like no option in here. So if you want to do it this way, you could just press 1 or hold 1 and do left click. This would give you this parameter, and do like 2 and add it here, or just place it like this to reduce clutter. Then we have subtract, so let's do subtract 1. It's by default 1. Then we'll multiply again with the 2 vector. So it would be -1, 1. I think the whole point of this is to make this in like center like this, the UV coordinates. Don't know how it works. And then we'll do append. If you want to know like what all these nodes do, I actually have a video. I don't know how many times I've said this. I'm sorry if it's getting like too many times I've said this. Okay. Append, basically what it did was UV was texture is something but two values, right? Float to U and V. So when we appended it with 0, it basically turned into U, V, comma 0. So whatever value it's around here, it's like 3 values now instead of 2. Then we will use transform, and this time we'll use transform, not the position. Okay, so transform vector will do from camera space to local space. Don't know what this does. Okay, I'll be honest. And then let's do normalize. Then we'll do multiply again, and this one is texture size. So let's promote this to texture size. Let's set it to 1 by default. Then we'll do transform again. This time we will go from local space to world space. So we turn from camera to local, then local to world. I don't even know how people think about this stuff. Then let's take vertex normal, multiply it with a billboard inflate. I'll explain what this does. Billboard inflate. It's this one actually is useful for this type of mesh. Then we'll add this. Press A and do left click or just search for add. Then multiply this with a scale. To be honest, I think we can actually also skip this step completely. There's no need to edit this step. But let's just do this still. Billboard, scale, and then let's set this to 1 by default. Okay, so I'm just going to delete this. This is what we created, and we'll add it in additional WPO. Let's apply it. Let's go to our MI. Now, if I enable all of this, which is billboard inflate, you know what? Let's just do one thing. Let's group this all. It's very confusing without grouping it. Let's call this as, I don't know, billboard. Why not? Now, if we check in here, we will have a folder, a drop down, I mean, called billboard, and we will have everything in here. So, the billboard inflate should be 1 by default. Why is it not? Actually, no, billboard inflate 0. This one should be 1. Billboard scale. If you make like any of them 0, so if you make, let's say, this 0, then it would not work. Or if you made this 0, it would not work. Why? Because we are multiplying, and if you multiply anything by 0, it gives 0. If you multiply anything by 0, it gives 0. If you keep it 1, it's basically saying that no change. Keep it 1, it says like no change, because multiplying by 1 is no change. Now, if you go in here and then basically increase this, you would see it basically starts scaling up. If you do 0, it would see it doesn't work. If you turn this 0, it doesn't work. So both of them should be values. And I don't know, both of them seems like they do the same stuff. I don't know what the difference is. I think this one just increases the texture, and this one increases the whole billboard, which is like each plane. Now if you increase this, let's see, we get something like this tree. And then if you inflate it, you can actually make it inflate like this. You could see like a balloon. If you do reverse, it will basically just go in there to maybe create a bush or something. And again, the other trees don't look that good when you do that. But again, if you want to scale, a bit, make it a lot more fuller, you can actually use this method. And let's go to, other settings like high. and let's just reset everything. Okay, now emissive intensity, if you turn 0, like I said, it would be black. So if you make it 1, it would at least remove all the dark area. Okay, you could even like increase it only a little if you want, but there's one issue, and that is if we turn this scene to dark, you'd see everything's now glowing, and maybe you'd want a dark area, right? So what can we do for that? Okay, maybe you have a dynamic day and cycle. So for that, what you will do is you will go into where is it, material parameter correction, mpc underscore I don't know, like emissive, just name it whatever, go in here, and we'll create a scalar parameter, call it emissivity or whatever. Okay, this is nothing but same as creating, this parameter. Where is it? Creating like this parameter, but now you could just drag it in here, drag it like this. You need to go and select that we want to use emissivity. Now if I go into this mpc emissive, you could see that it actually affects everything. So even if you have like 10 different materials, master material or different stuff, you can actually control it with this stuff. But one issue is I don't think this is the best way to do it, because what you should do is we will still use our emissive intensity like this, and then multiply this again with our emissive, which is the parameter. And if I use this one and set this to 1, again multiplied by 1 is no change, right? And that way what it allows us to do is still have this option where I can control how much emissivity it should be. Like if I want this one to be just 0.5, 0.3, then I can just set it. And then the global one, this one is responsible for the day and night cycle. So as soon as it starts getting darker, we can turn this to 0. And now if I show you in the dark area, you would see this is how it looks. So I think you understand what I mean. This one is responsible for the final emissivity, but only for the day and night cycle. But this inner one, like this inner one, is responsible for how much you want it to be showing, like how much this emissivity should be here. And because we have used like this method to create a black and white texture, you can actually use it on foliage and it will work perfectly, like without any issues. Now the only thing that is left to do is to make sure that you have like nice colors. Okay, so as long as you use like nice colors, it would look perfect. Okay, so for example, like I just quickly turn this into I don't know what is called, fall. I think it's called fall, right? And then play around with the height. The height is responsible for like how much the gradient should be by default. So if it's 380, then from 0 to 380 it would be black and white, but then you could actually also use it for other stuff like this. But I personally prefer to use this height as whatever the mesh height is, and then use the smooth gradient to control this stuff. Now in my original one, I also have this Fresnel intensity added. I don't know if this is important or not, but I'll just show you guys. If I add Fresnel, and let's add it directly like this, an emissive, apply it, we get something like this. So Fresnel is responsible for rim lighting, but because we're using two-sided mesh, I think it doesn't work that perfectly. So maybe if I turn this to 1, could say this is how it looks. So again, this is optional if you want to add it or not. What you could do is simply what was it? So this lerp goes into base color, and this goes into our emissive, right? So Fresnel is again a black and white mask, 0 to 1. Again, I've explained in this videos. Okay, I don't want to go in much detail. So what we could use is we could use this this stuff, which is this rim lighting, and multiply this again before our global emissivity. Okay, and add it in here, or maybe we can add it before too, it's up to you, and promote this to a parameter like this. Again, this is optional, okay, very optional. Let's play around with it. It's not looking that good. Why is that? This emissive intensity will place it after this one, okay, and place this like this, and yeah, again we are multiplying, right? So anything wherever there is like black, let me add like 1 2. So like wherever there is black, it will be like less, it would be dimmer. If it was fully black, it would be giving 0, right? Because multiplication, like basic multiplication. Let's connect this, and you can actually have like something like a rim light, okay. And you can see the difference it makes. Now if you're looking at something like this one, this is the same material that I've used. The only difference is we will not be able to use, billboard scale, because it's not a square. And this is something that I created directly with the trade software. It's a pre-trade samples library that is available in, like, if as soon as you install it, has a sample library. You could use that, and that's all I did. I just used like different colors, and you could even see I did use alpha channel because it's using this texture, and in the alpha channel we have this one. Rest of it is just coloring and then making it look the way you want it to, okay. So yeah, I know the video turned out to be big, but I think it's good enough and goes in much more detail than other videos available online. And thanks for watching. I hope this helped. Support me via my Patreon, subscribing, and all that good stuff. And goodbye.